welcome back, everybody. This is Season 2, Episode 2 of Ichabod's House. I am your host, Andy, along with Jen.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to talk about visitors from Lanulos. We also have some big news to share. We're now on YouTube, people. YouTube. It's very exciting.
We are on YouTube. If you want to just go to YouTube, you can type in the search engine there, Ichabod's House, and we will come up. And if you would like to subscribe, you will get notified of new episodes whenever they are available. Right now, you just have subtitles and a picture of our house graphic on there, but we're going to be moving to MP4s eventually. No guarantee on when that'll be, but you'll get to actually see us live and in action as we record this podcast.
I'm very excited about that. We're both
I
very
am too.
Heavy nonverbal communicators with facial expressions, and so I think this will be fun. Okay, so next up we have a gab, Google and beyond, ice fields. Last week we talked about ice fields in the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. And an ice field is a mass of interconnected valley glaciers on a mountain mass with protruding rock ridges or summits. They are often found in the colder climates and higher altitudes of the world where there's sufficient precipitation for them to form. So not really a summer destination to go picnicking.
No.
Yeah.
So, and now that we've heard all those technical words, we can forget about them and get on with our day.
For sure. Okay, so now on to Ichabod's nose pick. Jen, what do you got?
I went to a movie with my mom yesterday. We saw Agatha Christie's Murder on the Nile, directed by Kenneth Branagh and starring him as Hercule Poirot, the intrepid detective. It was very good. I had seen that movie back in the 80s. I don't even know if it was released in theaters. I saw it on television.
Wasn't Mia Farrow in that one?
Yes, she was. And so it was just really fun. It was good. It was nice to hang out with Mom. So I recommend seeing that movie in a theater and also hanging out with your mom, because that's a fun thing to do sometimes.
It is. And she texted me last night and said that you guys went and that I should totally go. And that she wished I was there because I'm her favorite. So, did I say that loud? So my Ichabod's nose is kind of, what do you call those sinful indulgences, secret delights? What are those? Stuff you don't want anybody to know that you watch, but you love it.
Guilty pleasure.
Secret delights, guilty pleasure, same thing. Okay. Love is Blind on Netflix. Have you ever watched that? Season 2 just premiered. And I watched all of season 1 when it came out last year.
I have not.
So it's super good. What it is you go, they have these women and men, and they go into these pods, and you have a row of women pods and a row of men pods, and they kind of date and just talk and get to know each other over a period of 10 days. And at the end of that 10 days, people do fall in love, and they propose and get engaged. And then they go on a romantic couples getaway. All the couples go to the same resort place in a tropical destination, and that's when the raunchy stuff starts, because that's when then you see the other people that you missed out on, and would you have been attracted to them based on your physical appearance, Anyway, it starts a lot of drama, and it's super superficial, and it's super fun. So if you want some just guilty pleasure stuff, I suggest Love is Blind. And then there you go. Then I also started rewatching Night Stalker on Netflix because I think I missed a lot of it the first time around. I don't know, it must have been napping or something. But anyway, I'm rewatching that.
That sounds good. There's a show called The Night Stalker with Gavin MacLeod from the 1970s. And it was basically, he was a newspaper reporter, complete with the little pork pie hat and in the seersucker suit. And he would hunt down stories on monsters that were roving Chicago, killing people or whatever.
Do you mean Gavin MacLeod as in Captain Stubing Gavin MacLeod?
No, Darren.
Isn't that his name, Gavin MacLeod?
Oh my God. Not Gavin MacLeod, Darren McGavin.
Okay, I was going to say, I never knew Gavin MacLeod was in a Night Stalker movie.
No, Darren McGavin, the dad from Christmas Story. For fuck's sake. Yeah. So
I just want to point out that I am not the only one who's having menopause dementia right now. Not the only one.
No.
Okay.
So that is
Not Gavin
that
McLeod.
is no Darren McGavin on YouTube, Night Stalker, and those are some good shows from the 1970s. I think that ran for 1 or 2 seasons only, but every once in a while I'll get a wild hair and stream those.
You do get
So
wild hairs once in a while.
I
Okay,
do.
fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. All right, so let's get into visitors from Lanulos.
Ah, aliens, those beings from another place. What are they? Are they spies? Are they just curious? Do they want to harvest us for our organs or our reproductive abilities?
God, please no. I've done enough reproducing. I'm done. Are they already here, embedded among us as skin wearing reptilians capable of infiltrating our government? And if so, why? Why not just take our organs or probe our butts and then go? Seriously.
I know. We are all familiar with abduction stories. Those tales of people snatched from their cars or their beds as if in a dream, waking to find their clothes on inside out, lying in the kitchen instead of their bed, or lying in their bed instead of being in their car where they were before they lost track of time.
Maybe you've believed some of these stories. Maybe you've scoffed at them. Or maybe you're like Agent Fox Mulder of the X Files. You want to believe, but you need just a little more proof.
So clearly there's life out there. Space is infinite. To suppose that in the vastness taking up universe after universe that no other life exists would be foolish. Also, the Pentagon has just announced its formation of a new department tasked with investigating UFOs.
Is this Space Force?
I don't know. They've always had one. Now it's just public knowledge.
Public knowledge,
And
right, for sure.
Yes.
And let's not forget Project Blue Book and the myriad of documents now available to the public concerning UFOs. Today's episode doesn't seek to legit or bullshit whether or not aliens are real or even whether or not they visited Earth. Today's show is focusing on one man's alleged repeated encounters with the alien Indrid Cold.
Woody Derenberger first encountered Cold in 1966 and went on to meet with the spaceman numerous times over the following years. Derenberger claims to have taken rides with Cold in his spacecraft, as well as having visited Cold's home planet of Lanulos. There, he met Cold's family, who, like everyone else on planet Lanulos, were nudists.
It's that kind of planet. So, let's get into today's episode, and as always, we're going to start by acknowledging our source, Visitors from Lanulos, My Contact with Indrid Cold by Woody Derenberger.
It all started on November 2nd, 1966. That's when Woody, riding along in his Ford Ecoline on a dark highway, first met Indrid Cold. Woody was on his way home to Mineral Wells, West Virginia, when he first saw the ship.
It was a spaceship, obviously, and its bulk and flashing lights blocked the road, making it impossible to go around. Woody's van coasted to a stop and watched, mesmerized, as a man climbed from the craft.
As soon as the man's feet hit the ground, the craft rose at least 50 feet off the ground, hovering over the road. Woody noticed the man was around 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed in at around 180 pounds. His dark hair was combed straight back from his face. His skin was tanned and smooth. I'm picturing George Harrison here. I don't know about you.
Same,
Okay.
for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
This man approached Woody's van, striding over to the passenger side. There, he stopped and peered through the window. He telepathically told Woody to roll the window down. So Woody did.
Then the man spoke. And here's a little something that is bothering me. If the man could communicate telepathically, why would Woody need to roll down the window? No. Roll down the window so you can hear me better.
I agree completely with that. Very good point.
Whatever, Woody. So then he asked Woody his name, because now Woody could totally hear him better that the window was down. And he also explained that Woody could either think or speak his answer. Once Woody introduced himself, the being explained his name was Cold, Indrid Cold, middle name Danger.
As well as it should be. I think if he's an alien without a middle name, we should be able to put a middle name in there. So I think that's clearly very appropriate.
Okay. Indrid Danger Cold. There you go.
The pair chatted. Cold said he was a searcher. He came to check things out, see what was up on this rock called Earth. He nodded toward some lights in the distance, the lights of Parkersburg. He asked Woody what that place was.
Woody said it was a town where people live. It turned out that where Cold came from, a town was called a gathering. And although Mr. Cold was curious about the town, he assured Woody he meant no harm.
I sleep. Let me do this again. I got to think of an Indrid Cold accent.
How would Lanulosians speak?
I sleep and breathe and bleed, even as you do. Have no fear. We mean you no harm. I don't know why, but I'm thinking of the goat in Hoodwinked. And I don't know why that came to mind.
I sleep and breathe and bleed.
Yes.
Even as you do. Have no fear. We mean you no harm. That's when Woody goes, you know what? Let's just stick to telepathic communication.
Because this is highly annoying. We could go with our old standby Southern drawl or our Bronx accents, because that's what we could do there.
Yes, we have mastered a few accents. Lanulosian is not one of them.
No.
So once he had established that he bleeds just like Woody does, he then told Woody to notify the local officials about his visit. After that, he climbed back into his spacecraft and flew away. An astonished Woody drove home and told his wife what had happened. And then he did as Cold had asked. He called the police.
And here's another question that comes to mind. Why didn't he just hover a spacecraft over the police station?
There's a lot of these questions that are going to come up throughout this, like why this, why not this, how come this, why that. And we'll get a little bit into what may have happened with Woody in next week's episode.
So basically, ours, to quote again the wonderful Tim Curry, ours is not to question why. Ours is but to do or die.
Exactly.
During the course of a few conversations with the cops that evening, Woody learned that there were other calls from people who had been stopped in the same manner on the same highway that night. Oh, interesting.
The next day, November 3rd, 1966, Woody told his boss about the incident, and it wasn't long before news station WTAP-TV sent a producer around to arrange an interview. That afternoon, folks got to see and hear Woody talk about his meeting with Indrid Cold.
Word spread fast, and by the time Woody arrived home that evening, a crowd was waiting at the Derenberger home to see the man who had talked to an alien.
Okay, so let's legit or bullshit here. Let's talk about the story so far. Did Woody really see this thing? Is it possible for a spacecraft to single out a particular person to make contact with? What would you do if you were Woody?
Well, I would probably pee my pants first, because that's a given. And then, I think that absolutely could happen. You know, I'm kind of all in on the whole alien thing, because I agree with you that it's such a vast space. I don't think it's very smart to think we're alone, first of all. I don't think it's very smart to think that we have the utmost technology and that our technology is top of the line. I think there's probably many, many other universes out there that have wonderful technology that can go back and forth, just like in Star Trek. And Star Wars, and the space warp, or whatever that's called. Lightning warp? What is it called when they go really fast?
Light speed? Warp speed?
Light speed. Warp speed, something like that.
Or lightning warp.
Lightning warp. I think that sounds a little bit better.
Warped lightning.
I think it's interesting that if it's true that he called the police station and got that response, I think that's really interesting that other people were stopped in the same manner. But again, it begs the question, if you wanted the police to know, why don't you just go to them yourself? I don't know.
I know.
Maybe because the police wouldn't have told anybody.
It seems very manipulative to have Woody do something like that. It seems like they're manipulating this man. Here's what I want you to do. These are, and they're subtle about it. These are the things that we call our town. This is my name. Now go home and call the police. That seems, I don't know, questionable and manipulative to me.
Yeah, I agree. For sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think it totally, absolutely could have happened. I find it odd that that was the request and not, can I put something up your backside?
I believe Woody, and I have the advantage of having read this book, right? So
Right.
I believe that Woody is telling the truth of every one of his encounters. My doubts come in with regard to what he was shown, why he was shown it, and if Indrid Cold was really what he said he was.
Okay.
So, like I said, I have the advantage of having read the book, but
Right. No, I get
anyway.
that.
So far I'm calling legit on what Woody saw, but I can't be all in on whether or not Indrid Cold is really of another world.
What would you do if you were Woody? Would you have called the police, or would you have gone home and went to bed?
I probably would have gone home and told Chris, my husband, about it, and then I probably would have just stayed up all night internet searching.
Pacing.
In 1966, I realized they didn't, pacing and searching and seeking a support group that had experienced similar things. Woody didn't have the luxury of the internet or that kind of thing in 1966, so I can't say what for sure he experienced. But I will say that I don't know that I would have called the police. I think now we're by nature suspicious of pretty much everybody. If I had called the police, it would have been something like, hey, there's some wacko stopping people out on the highway. Check
Right.
that out, is
Right.
how I would have looked at it.
Well, and I think to add validity to this, you make the point that this was in 1966, no internet. I mean, people went to church, did what they were told. You didn't talk about aliens. You tried not to date or marry outside of your race. You certainly weren't allowed to be a homosexual and talk about that. So I guess what I'm saying is that ideas other than the nuclear family and being Christian and being white, anything outside of that realm was really either laughed at or looked down upon, or you could go to jail for. So,
Right.
or put in an insane asylum. So I don't think that he would have taken this as something that was untrue and put it out there just for attention, when there's lots of other ways he could have gotten attention other than this particular way, because
Right.
this was very dangerous to his character, who he was, probably his livelihood, his friends and family. So I don't think that he would do that just willy-nilly unless he was crazy himself.
I agree.
So the next day, November 4th, started as usual. Woody traveled to Ohio with a friend and was on his way home that night when he began to experience a funny sensation in his forehead. He knew the sensation was Indrid Cold attempting to communicate.
I will say that a tingly sensation in your forehead could also be shingles. So if it persists, see somebody about that. Have that checked out.
You might need to have somebody look up. Don't put that in there.
Don't
is the
put that
lesson
there.
here.
Exactly. Cold telepathically told him to drive slowly and carefully because a spaceship was hovering just above the van. And Indrid was there and wanted to have another chat, which was totally possible thanks to telepathy. Thank you, telepathy.
Side effects include anal leakage, extreme fatigue. Okay. Sorry. All right. Cold explained he was from Lanulos, which, as it turns out, was a planet just like Earth in the galaxy of Ganymede. Yeah, there we go.
I think so.
Cold had 2 sons, ages 8 and 11, and was married to a woman named Kimmy.
So you might be wondering now, hey, what was living on Lanulos like? Well, Cold explained that they had 3 seasons instead of 4. And apparently these seasons were all over the whole planet. Not like, the North and South Pole where it's always cold. I'm guessing he's talking just middle latitudes here. No Mediterranean climate. Because he didn't get into this. Which is another thing that seems like, if you've got a planet, the farther away you get from an equator of a planet, the more extreme temperature changes you're going to have. If you're on the equator, your temperatures are going to be pretty much static all year round. You might have slight variation. But it's almost as if, again, they bring Cold, or they bring Woody to this place or talk about this place and say, well, we have 3 seasons, not 4. And they're all just like, everything's just like where you live in West Virginia, where you would have 4 seasons, right? Anyway, Cold explained they had 3 seasons instead of 4, whereas we have spring, summer, fall, and winter. Lanulos has planting, harvesting, and the cold season. Indrid Cold.
Interestingly, Derenberger makes no allowance for longitudinal changes of temperature on Lanulos. One has to wonder if the entire planet has 3 seasons, or if that occurs just in the parts of Lanulos that are in the middle latitudes.
Oh, yeah. See, I got ahead of myself.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Inquiring minds
You did.
do
That's
want to
okay.
know. Cold explained that Lanulosians lived between 125 to 150 years, but again, no mention is made regarding how a Lanulosian year compares to an Earth year.
At the time of the second encounter, Woody told no one. However, he did disclose it at a later date to NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena in Washington, D.C.
Sadly, but not unexpectedly, Woody's television interview was picked up by United Press International as well as the Associated Press. And as phone numbers were pretty public back then, Woody's phone rang constantly. People wanted to hear all about Indrid Cold.
Yeah, they parked up and down the road outside his rural home, waiting to catch a glimpse of Woody, or maybe even Indrid. Police had to be called over and over to disperse the crowd, only to have it gather once again once the cops left.
Woody's children were bullied and ridiculed. His commissions from work, which were his primary source of income, dwindled and finally disappeared altogether. Finally, Woody and his family moved to a cabin belonging to his in-laws to start over.
See, I totally called it. He wouldn't just make that stuff up for nothing. Your life can be ruined.
Yeah, and your kids' lives, right? And that's a bigger deal than having your own life ruined, because you're not going to, as a parent, the last thing you want is to see your kids go through something awful.
Yeah, for sure. So sad. But spacecraft followed him. Sightings of UFOs persisted in the skies nearby, and it wasn't long before he was discovered. The family moved again, but eventually his wife took the kids and moved to be with her folks in Ohio. In 1970, the couple divorced for good. Oh.
Yeah, but that's in the future. As of right now, let's get back to 1966. After the interview with the news and after the repeated phone calls to police to break up the crowd outside his house, Woody was visited by a guy named Bruce Parsons, captain of the Cocoa Beach, Florida PD, but he also happened to be a security guard for NASA. I don't know how you could be a police captain for a police department and also moonlight as a security guard for NASA, but I didn't write this book, so.
That's some side hustle right there.
That is some side hustle right
I'm
there.
going to go to my night job and work for NASA. Okay, so now remember, this was before Woody and his wife split up. That didn't happen until 1970. So at this time, the entire family was invited to Florida. Once there, Woody met with a guy named Charlie, NASA's head guy.
And that's just what he was called, his head guy, head of NASA. Woody was questioned over several nights and was mildly surprised to discover that the government already knew about Lanulos, but they didn't want to notify the public due to the panic it would cause.
That's interesting. NASA clearly knew about it, as did NICAP and the Air Force, but they were reluctant to acknowledge their findings. As part of his debriefing, Woody underwent an EEG to see if maybe some brain damage or a seizure disorder was the explanation for all this talk of Indrid Cold and Lanulos.
Dr. Robert Jenkins was the physician who oversaw the EEG, and he did so under the observation of Pete Velarde from NICAP. Jenkins reported the EEG was normal, with the exception of the time period that Woody was telepathically communicating with Indrid Cold. And in that instance, the tracing revealed only increased concentration, not a brainwave abnormality.
Increased concentration. I need to do some of that. I need to get some of that. Jenkins said this: the record was a normal record with no indication of any central nervous system pathology at all. There was no evidence of any psychiatric disorders at all. Also, as a part of the examination, I submitted a report to the Pittsburgh Subcommittee of NICAP of the psychiatric examination of Mr. Derenberger, in which I stated that I could find no evidence of mental disorder. There was no indication of any lower pathology. I found Mr. Derenberger to be normal.
Okay. So did anyone, other than the government, of course, know about Lanulos? Or was Woody alone with his contact experience? Well, as it happened, there was someone. And as we might imagine, his name was Ed.
Woody was appearing as a guest on a Washington, D.C. radio show when Ed called in and confessed that he too had been to Lanulos. And Woody was like, no way! And Ed was like, way! So they decided then and there that they had to meet.
Totally. Woody decided to drive to wherever it was that Ed was living so that they might meet in person and chat about their experiences. Woody took a couple of friends along with him for this. His friend, Harold Salkin, and writer John Keel.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, John Keel is the man who wrote the Mothman Prophecies, as well as several other books about the paranormal. And Harold Salkin was a member of Space Age Communications Incorporated, as well as publisher of a newsletter called The Little Listening Post.
And here I need to deviate from the script for a minute. I checked Amazon, which has, among its collections, the collected issues of The Little Listening Post. This collection is available for Kindle as well as in paperback. However, the summary for this lists as publisher Mrs. Walter Colcord John, or Clara to her friends. The published works available on Amazon include the years 1954 to 1965. So I was unable to dig up any information on Harold Salkin as publisher of this or any other work. And since this takes place in 1966, it's entirely possible that this is a legitimate claim, but I couldn't verify it.
Well, that's very high integrity of you.
Well, it speaks to the validity of Woody's claims, right?
I agree.
If he's got this guy, Harold Salkin, but I couldn't find anything in my Google searching for this guy. And whether or not he actually published the Little Listening Post, I can't say. So I can't, the claims made in this program are not necessarily true. We're just reporting, we're just doing a book report here, basically.
We could be completely legit or completely bullshit. You be the judge.
That's right. You be the judge.
Okay, we're putting this information here because it's important to have all the facts. Whether or not Clara or Harold was the publisher of the Little Listening Post is important because it speaks to the credibility of Woody as a witness for the encounters with Mr. Cold.
Exactly. So now back to our story. Derenberger agreed to meet with Ed to discuss his sightings, and as he and Harold Salkin and John Keel headed there, Harold asked how would they possibly be able to tell if Ed was being truthful.
I told him that if the young man described a certain flying pleasure craft resembling a magic carpet or a flying sled, we would know that he was telling the truth and not just making up a story from what he had heard.
Oh, God. Okay, so let's legit or bullshit here again. Do we think Derenberger is losing credibility? Do we think Salkin is a real guy? Do we think Ed is a real guy? Do we think Indrid Cold is a real guy? I can tell you that John Keel is a real guy and actually wrote the foreword for Derenberger's book here. So regardless of what we think about Derenberger, it's important to note that he had John Keel's support. And in the Mothman Prophecies, John Keel does refer to Indrid Cold.
Well, then there you go. That's all you need, right? John Keel. I mean, it's John fucking Keel. I think enough said, sister. I think it's all legit.
I actually have several books by John Keel. And whether or not you agree with his pontification, if you will, of what he has seen in his encounters and his travels, because he has traveled the world, it's interesting to note that he kept a very open mind that anything is possible. And I think that's important. It's important to walk through life like that. It's a beneficial thing. That doesn't mean be gullible, right? And it doesn't mean sell all your belongings and build an ark in your backyard or join the cult down the street. What it does mean is be aware that there can be experiences that are not necessarily able to be explained, and you can't definitively say that didn't happen just because it's hard for you to believe that. Having said that, I am troubled that I had trouble that I was unable to. I'm troubled that I was unable to find any information on Harold Salkin as someone who existed. Right. And I'm troubled that Indrid Cold would have said, okay, you've seen me, now go home and call the police.
Is John Keel still alive?
No.
Well, then that shoots that out of the water. How many books by John Keel do you have, Jen? And does it rival the number you have of the dude who wrote the Falk Monster stuff? All those books and the guy we met, which I forget his name.
What is his name? Short little guy. Shorter than me.
Was he shorter than you? I don't think he was shorter than you.
I think he weighed less than me, too.
The guy who drove the van in our tour?
He didn't drive the van. He squatted.
Oh, he was sat right by you. The guy that you were starstruck with. Anyway, I'm just wondering if you met John Keel. I saw the look on your face when we met this dude, this writer, and I think it'd be really fun to see your look on your face if you ever met John Keel. But that's
I do like meeting writers
because he's passed on. I know. You were so starstruck. I loved it.
I have Jadoo, and that's about his travels all over Europe and Nepal and his hunting. He did go look for the Yeti and had some experiences there. I have Strange Creatures from Time and Space, and of course I have the Mothman Prophecies.
All right, so that's just a little sidebar there. Sorry about that. I just had some questions.
That's okay. So do you think, what do you think? Do we think Derenberger is losing his credibility? Do you think Salkin's a real guy? Do you think Ed's a real guy?
No, I don't think Derenberger's losing his credibility, because I think John Keel is right there to lift him up. I mean, he wrote the foreword in his book. He mentioned Indrid Cold in the Mothman Prophecies book. So no, I don't think he's losing credibility. Harold Salkin. So last week's episode, when we did it on Port Chatham, Alaska, the gentleman Andrew Kamluck, they were able to establish as real. The miner, the guy who was out mining for gold and disappeared. They had word of mouth for the legitimacy of that. There was no, record of him, official record of him anywhere. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't a real person. Mm-hmm. Because I think records are much more easily validated now because we keep such better records. But back in the first half of the 20th century, I don't think that was such the case. So I think it is harder for you to find out about people who lived back then.
Right.
So I don't think that necessarily means that he wasn't real. I think it just means that maybe there were some poor records, there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's all I'm thinking is that could just be chalked up to poor records. I don't think we necessarily need to say that he's not real.
Okay, I agree with you 100%. I think what Woody experienced, Woody is reporting truthfully what he experienced.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay. I don't think that you screw up every person in your family's life for something that's not true.
Agreed.
Now, let's get into Ed's story. Ed lived in a college apartment with 3 other guys. He explained that he had been stopped on the road in the same way Woody had, but it wasn't Indrid Cold who spoke to Ed. It was another guy named Vadig.
On a later occasion, after that first meeting, Vadig pulled up to Ed's place in a car and asked Ed to hop in. Once Ed climbed in the car, Vadig asked him if he'd like to go for a ride in his spaceship.
Well, what could Ed say? What would you say? What would I say? Of course, Ed said yes. And so he was taken away to Lanulos. What I would say is, do you have any Dramamine? Because I'm going to need a lot of it if I'm going to get in that spacecraft.
Exactly. Well, Ed was able to verify without prompting the flying sleds that Woody said he'd need to talk about. And he also was able to describe the landscape and buildings on Lanulos. Now, back when Woody was still living in Mineral Wells, he came home pretty late one night, and as he opened his car door to get out, he heard these words.
"Don't be frightened, Woody. It is Indrid and my friend Carl." Because everybody has a friend Carl that they surprise people with in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. Well, color Woody surprised. He was really happy to see his old pal and invited him and Carl inside. They declined due to concern about frightening Woody's family.
So they sat outside on the porch and talked for over 2 hours. During that conversation, Indrid and Carl talked about Lanulos. There were no wars on Lanulos, ever. They didn't understand the word hate, and race was not even a thing. They were all God's children.
So they were Christian aliens.
They were.
Oh, they were catty and judgmental.
Well, now it doesn't say initially. They could have just been Jewish.
Oh,
Or
okay. Got it.
Islam, because they just have one God right now.
Okay.
We don't know yet if there's Christ or the Holy Spirit. I imagine we'll find that out here eventually.
Okay. Well, Lanulosians weren't superior to Earthlings, except in the sense that they had learned to serve God. Oh. And the only reason they could, quote, conquer gravity and bend time and space, unquote, was because they'd been trying longer.
The reason Earthlings experienced so much strife was because they were unable to communicate with one another or care about each other's feelings. They all held hands and sang, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke."
And keep it company. I just heard that song on the radio the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So now we're going to move on to the segment of the show called Woody Goes for a Ride in a Spaceship. Woohoo!
One evening, as Woody was returning from Ravenswood, West Virginia, Indrid called him up on his mind phone and said, "Hey, how would you... Are we doing the goat? What are we doing for Indrid? Hey, how would you like to go for a ride in a spaceship?"
Because I've never been telepathic, nor have I ever played one on television. And I believe I would like... I don't know, would the channel be that clear? I'm thinking there could be some reverberation there, some echoing, some quivering of the voice there. I don't think it's going to come in that clear.
Woody,
I don't know.
Woody,
Right?
Woody, psst, Woody. Psst.
Not a 1-900 number, Jen.
Psst, Woody.
Reverberation.
Woody. Get in my spaceship, Woody.
I got $1.
I'm going to take you for a ride. I got a space puppy in here. And some space ice cream. And some space candy.
It'll be a really good time with your wife. Okay, well, Woody was clearly totally down for this, so he found a spot to pull over at Indrid's instruction, of course, and he climbed aboard the ship. He wasn't beamed up. See, now I'm having some doubts. He should have just been beamed up.
No, he wasn't beamed up.
What kind of cheap-ass spaceship is this, Indrid? Okay, once inside, Indrid said, "Well, where would you like to go?" And Woody said, "To the Amazon."
Tally-ho! To the Amazon!
To the place of large women.
So they put on pith helmets and khaki pants and knee socks. And off they went.
That's what you wear on the Amazon. Knee socks.
What you wear?
With
So
face
the
necks.
So the next thing you know, Woody is flying in a saucer headed for the Amazon. The ship vibrated as they traveled.
He was mesmerized.
He was mesmerized repeatedly as they traveled. He was mesmerized so much that it caused a bit of nausea for old Woody.
Goodness.
But he managed to keep from puking and embarrassing himself in front of Indrid and the other guys.
See, this is what I'm saying. He should have checked. Do you have some Dramamine, some Bonine? Come on. A little ginger ale, maybe, goes a long way. The ship flew low over the towns in the Amazon. He was able to see the people, the buildings, the streets, and all the villages. But that was just a taste of what was to come. From the Amazon, the ship flew up, up, and away to a spot 600 miles from the moon. Oh, apparently Lanulosians didn't use the metric system. There, they met up with the mothership.
Once on board this mothership, Woody was taken to the commander and introduced to the mothership's crew. He was taken to the dining room and given a meal consisting of something like potatoes, something like green beans, and a meat called katuma. which did not taste like chicken, but more like wild deer.
Oh, okay. All right. The mothership cruised along, and during that voyage, Woody ended up within 50 feet, again, not metric, of the moon's surface. This was amazing because at the time, neither Russia or the U.S. had landed there yet.
Steep craters pockmarked the moon's surface, as well as tall cliffs. The commander pointed out one particularly steep crater where other ships parked. We are speculating that that crater was where teenage Lanulosians went to make out.
I totally just did that thought. Inspiration point, baby. From the moon, the craft took a quick trip to Saturn, which, contrary to all laws of physics and anything astronomers have reported in the last few centuries, is not spherical, but basically just a big bowl crusted with ice. The people on Saturn live in the bottom of this bowl as if in a valley, and the rings of Saturn are not made of debris, but are just rainbows. Beautiful, translucent rainbows.
The Care Bears live out there in those rainbows. And they
I was going to say something about... Go ahead.
They still weren't done with this galactic tour. So go ahead, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, if the Care Bears live out there and they're farting rainbows in the rainbows, that's a lot of rainbows.
It is a lot of rainbows. And if there were unicorns out there, well, damn. Well, from Saturn, it was off to Lanulos, where they just did a flyover. Woody was a bit disappointed by this. After all, he was so close. He wanted to get off and meet with the people. But he would need vaccines and a good scrubbing before climbing from the ship.
Vaccines from Indrid
Yeah,
to
so
be able to go
apparently-
on to Lanulos.
Well, so if you go to another country here,
Right,
you have to get
yes.
vaccines in order to go. Well, so apparently, if you are going to be an intergalactic motherfucking traveler, you got to have some space vaccines. So,
Goodness sakes. All right. Poor Woody. So close yet so far. The pilot did fly low over the land and allowed Woody to wave at everyone. He was in love with Lanulos, and Indrid promised him that someday soon he would go and be able to land there.
okay. So I have to stop us again to legit or bullshit once more. Let's talk about the logistics of traveling to the Amazon, the Moon, Saturn, and Lanulos in one day. What do we think of the crater parking lot on the Moon? And what do we think of Saturn as a margarita glass rimmed with ice and basically just a big bowl where people...
I totally love that. And I am all in on that. I think that's fabulous. And I really hope that that's true because that would be a fun, super fun place to visit. I'm really confused about the whole vaccine thing. I don't know. Because I would think that if they're that developed of a society and they have no wars and they have all this technology, that there probably wouldn't be any sicknesses he could get. I mean, what would he be vaccinated for? You know, that would be my
Well,
thing. Because I wouldn't let him put that in me.
They're still going to have microscopic life. They're still going to have, you have to keep in mind that the most primitive form of life on Earth was the protozoa, the amoeba, single-cell organisms,
Right.
bacteria. So one would have to speculate that on Lanulos, they too would have diseases that someone wouldn't necessarily have an immune response to. And if we're assuming that all living creatures have some sort of immune response to foreign microbes that get into their system, then it would make sense that they would want him vaccinated. I think it speaks more to the advanced nature of their society. But one would have to wonder, was Indrid vaccinated against Earth diseases? And if so, who vaccinated him?
And how? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's an alien. Did it go right up the butt or were it just an injection in the arms? I don't know. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Is this...
I do not think
legit?
it's possible. I do not think it is possible, even if we think of bending time and space. I don't know how in one day one could visit the Moon, do a flyover, Lanulos, do the flyover, and the Amazon and do a flyover. Especially if Lanulos is in another galaxy. I don't think that even if there are wormholes, it's be like, hey, I'm going to go to Target and get some groceries, and then I'm going to go downtown to Costco, and then I'm going to go over. That's going to take you'd be gone for a substantial amount of time, even with being able to drive a car or whatever. You have to account for the time you would spend at any given place, right? So I'm guessing he didn't just spend 10 minutes at the moon, 10 minutes at Lanulos, whatever. So time is doing a little bit of something. Here's the other thing. The rings of Saturn are not rainbows. They're not. And it is impossible for a planet to exist in the shape of a bowl because that's not how physics works.
But that's super fun to think about.
Agreed, but it's not possible.
All right, so I'll give you all that. But I'm thinking if they had a magic carpet like Aladdin and Jasmine did, they could probably totally do it in one day. Just saying.
Again, physics, because if you're exposed on...
You know what, party pooper? You're raining on my freaking intergalactic parade here, sister.
I want to stress here, I do not believe that Woody is lying, okay? I do not believe he is lying. I think he is experiencing something. I don't think he's crazy. I don't think he's hallucinating. But I think what he is experiencing is being manipulated by Indrid Cold. That's what I think.
All right, I'll accept that. For sure. Okay. I'm with you on that. But maybe he did go to the moon. Wouldn't it be really cool if there was Inspiration Point at the moon? Oh my God. How cool is that? Sorry, I just like to think about that. Okay. Well, Woody went back to his life in Mineral Wells. He was still living there at the time, and his wife hadn't left him yet. He was still holding on to his job, but thinking, no doubt, about taking a trip to his friend's planet. When would it happen? How would it happen?
Well, on May 11th, 1967, Woody was on his way to Pomeroy in his van when his mind phone rang. And Indrid told him that, at last, it was time to go to Lanulos. Sadly, there was a wrinkle. The place Woody parked was out in the open, which meant that anyone could drive by and see his van.
Well, thank God. This guy named Clinell from planet Cerebus was on board Indrid's spacecraft along with his Volkswagen, because that's what you take on a spacecraft. So the ship dropped the VW down on the ground, and this chick named Elvain Cletaw drove the VW while Clinell drove Woody's truck and parked it someplace less obvious.
Okay, so we have a little vehicle jockeying here going on. We have a new planet brought into the mix, planet Cerebus, and the Clinell, the guy from Cerebus, has a Volkswagen up on board the spaceship, okay? And everybody's worried about Woody's truck being out in the open. So they beam down the Volkswagen, and Elvain Cletaw drives the Volkswagen, and Clinell drives Woody's truck. So they take it off. Then the truck is hidden. Now, once the truck was in a more secure location, Clinell climbed back into the Volkswagen with Elvain Cletaw, and they headed back to the ship, and the Volkswagen was put up on board. And we will let our listeners ponder that for a bit, because what the actual fuck?
Yeah. Again, I say, why wasn't Woody just beamed up?
Why didn't they just park the truck somewhere else in the first place and have the Volkswagen waiting for them there? Why didn't they what's with the Volkswagen anyway? Why does the spaceman have a Earth car on board the ship? I have so many head-scratching questions.
I agree with you completely.
I had to read that like 3 times in the book. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. But I am digging his mind phone, for sure.
Oh, God almighty.
Now, I know you're wondering who else was on this ship. Well, Indrid was there, of course, and he'd brought his wife, Kimmy, with him. Carl Ardo was there as second in command, and there were 2 other crew members, Tawny and Daryl, also known as Captain and Tennille. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Daryl. I'm Daryl. Hi, I'm Daryl. I'm from outer space. My name's Daryl. I live in space.
And I'm
and I'm here.
Johnny. I'm Johnny, and I'm here to get in that Volkswagen because I heard it's a really fun ride.
Tawny, we told you repeatedly to stop wearing the low-cut spacesuit. Put your space bra back on because we can see your space nipples protruding. God almighty. So the ship took off, and within 30 minutes, the small craft was aboard the great mothership and on its way to Lanulos. It was during this trip that Woody was vaccinated in the right arm, and he was given a disinfecting shower so that he might mix and mingle among the people of Lanulos.
I am so glad he wasn't vaccinated up the butt, because that's what I would have thought. Aliens do have, we have this preconceived notion that they just go right for the anal probing, and I would have thought, well, if they're going to vaccinate him, it's going to go right up the butt. I'm so glad they put it in his arm.
Exactly.
All right, so let's legit or bullshit one last time for today's episode. Was that dude's name really Daryl? And did they really go to Lanulos? Well, if Tawny was... I imagine Tawny being like one of those high-end ladies of the evening that go to casinos, and these men think she looks beautiful and she's being really nice, but really she's a hooker. She wants your money. I'm thinking Tawny's like, let's go to Lanulos. Come on, guys.
So Tawny's a space hooker?
Yeah, I think she's a space hooker. And she wants some money, and the only way to get it is to lure these earthlings onto the ship. And then her pimp pays her.
Does she get paid in space credits or Earth money? Or how does that work?
Earth vaccinations. So she can come down and pimp and be a hooker down here. That's what she gets paid in. Earth vaccinations.
I'm going to need 5 Salk polio vaccines, a tetanus shot, and in case I get the clap, I need some penicillin too.
And you better set me up with that HPV, because everybody's got that down there. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think? Is it real?
I think that something is being done with Woody, like brainwashing or something. And I think that Daryl came to the party late and wasn't creative enough to think of another name. And so when, quote unquote, Indrid is introducing Woody around, this poor guy's like, Mondor, no, Claxton, no, Daryl. And everybody's like, God fucking damn it, Daryl. You had one job. Come up with a space name. Jesus. Are you wearing underwear with that jumpsuit? Probably not. Fuck you, Daryl. We all hate you.
And take the sock out from the middle there. Good God.
Exactly.
We all know it's not that big.
Take off that space medallion too, you loser. I think that I want to, again, say, I think that Woody is telling the truth as he sees it and as he experienced it. I do not believe he went to Lanulos, the Amazon. I do not believe there's a parking lot on the moon. And we all know Saturn is not a bowl. It's not possible for a planet to be shaped like that. Furthermore, we know that there's no life on Saturn. So, and we know that the rings, I'm sorry, children everywhere, they're not made of rainbows.
What are they made of?
Debris. Space debris. Okay, Google and Beyond for next week. What are Saturn's rings made of? And if it comes up rainbows, I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to quit this job.
Well, what I'm... You have to give a 2-year notice. So, just saying. Well, because I'm thinking maybe, but there's no sun to reflect. I thought maybe if it was like gaseous stuff.
I think that it is.
Rocks and stuff, that maybe there could be a glint of a rainbow in there where somebody could have a hint of it. Maybe. I mean, that's really stretching it for this one aspect, I know. But that's all I got for that. So, yeah, I mean, I would really like to meet the people who are putting so much time and effort into manipulating Woody.
And to what end?
And to what end? And are they aliens who can't get home and are just doing this out of spite? I don't know. Are they aliens? Maybe they are aliens and haven't really taken him anywhere. They're just making him put on some special sunglasses and rocking him around in a chair. I don't know.
I know. It almost, you just really have to wonder, where's he being taken? Where is all this occurring? And we'll get into more of this, next week as to what's happening.
I just had a thought. What if
Let's
he
hear
was
it.
given some psychedelic drugs and
I think
then
that's entirely
told
possible.
that this is what's happening? Very interesting.
Entirely,
I watch
entirely
a lot of
possible.
documentaries, so. Okay. Well, fantastic.
Well, we will continue with Woody's journey and friendship with Indrid Cold next week. We'll get into what Lanulos was like, their houses, their people, etc., and we'll dissect what we actually think was going on with Woody.
So be sure to tune in. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, or email us at jenandandy@ichabodshouse.com. And also, if you could hit that subscribe button on wherever you listen to your podcasts and rate us, give us a 5-star rating, that would really help us out.
And keep in mind, we are also on YouTube now, so you can find us there. Until next time, remember, Ichabod loves you.
Carry a flashlight and always bring extra pants.